please. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Madigan, Executive Vice President and Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences here at Columbia, and it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this Columbia World Leaders Forum event. We're honoured today, very honoured, to have the President of the Republic of Namibia, Hage Geingob, here with us today. The President is accompanied by a delegation of his staff and government leaders, including the Honourable Natembo Nandi Nandwaito, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, First Lady Monica Gengos, and also the Namibian Ambassador and other ministers. This forum, established over a decade ago, gives us the privilege of learning about and hearing about pivotal issues in public policy and governance from the men and women grappling with these challenges on a daily basis. The World Leaders Forum is a remarkable space. It's where we gather to engage the issues we read about in the headlines and our course readings: the refugee crisis, climate change and sustainability, the need for transparency in our global financial systems, and ongoing encounters with that grand experiment, democracy. Last year, Namibia celebrated 25 years of independence and democracy. I'm certain we will all learn much from President Geingob's address about his country's growth over the course of those years. Here to introduce the President is Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Quetelet Professor of Sustainable Development and Professor of Health Policy and Management. He is also Director of the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia, as well as of the Sustainability Development Solutions Network. This year, Professor Sachs concluded a truly remarkable 14-year term as Director of the Earth Institute. The Earth Institute brings together the brightest earth scientists, economists, experts in public health, business and law to do critical research into the forces that shape our planet and then to integrate their discoveries into solving Earth's many challenges. To put those challenges into context, here is Professor Sachs.
Good afternoon. What a great honor it is to have President Geingob with us today. I was 14 years head of the Earth Institute, but he's been 15 years Prime Minister of his country and President, and I would say James Madison, the head of the Constitutional Assembly that wrote the Constitution of the country, and I would say the Thomas Jefferson also, who brought the world community together to support the independence of Namibia. It's a remarkable, remarkable career, and I'm so thrilled that I've been able to know you and learn from you and to admire your leadership for many, many years, back to Harvard days and the United Nations, and all during the period of your prime ministership, two prime ministerships, 1990 to 2002 and 2012 to 2015. Namibia is one of the star performers of Africa. It is absolutely consistently rated at the top of the charts for its democratic institutions, rule of law, transparency. Its economy grows much above the African average. Its per capita income puts it near the top of the charts in Africa. None of this should ever be taken for granted, of course. None of this should be assumed that that's a natural way, because unfortunately, good governance is never a natural way. I think Namibia can be very proud of all its presidents and its leaders, but I know that there's a very special place and role that you have played from well before independence, through the adoption of the Constitution, and through the history of your young country. So on behalf of all of us at Columbia University, it's a profound honor to have you here. We're very much looking forward to your talk about good governance and transparency. This is based also on the President's PhD research on good governance and his scholarly research as well as his practical experience. It's a remarkable and wonderful combination. Mr. President, thank you for being here.
Well, Professor Sachs, thank you very much. It's a wonderful introduction. Dr. David Madigan, Professor Ratton, students of Columbia University, members of my delegation, Joseph Stiglitz. I'm always fighting with the name, but ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to be here to share my views on Namibia and Africa at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. When I was telling somebody I didn't say to give lecture at Columbia University. I said, I'm going to give a talk at Columbia University. That's the greatest honor bestowed upon me. But as I was saying that, there is another invitation from Harvard University. So I'm going there also on Wednesday. So I'm honored to talk to one of the best universities in the world. Let me express my profound thanks to Dr. Madigan and all those who were involved in making this visit possible. You may not be aware, but during the olden days, I once sat here attending one summer school classes. So I could easily claim that I was at Columbia too, as many are doing. It was just for summer school, but I was at this year in early 60s. Today, I'll talk about constitutional democracy, governance, and development reforms in Africa. To locate my topic, I would like to use the example of the Organization of African Unity, and AU. I regard Organization of African Unity as transactional organization. It was there to fight to free Africa. But it was a state-to-state organization. It didn't involve the people. But then we transformed it to AU. And just to make an example, I regard AU as a transformational organization in a sense that it involves the people. We have the parliament, Pan-African Parliament. We have what you call now, not regarding anymore state sovereignty as sacrosanct. We do intervene when we feel that there is a violation in one country, violation of human rights, or unlawful entry into power by presidents. It will be AU and SADC and ECOWAS who will be the ones who will act and ostracize that leader who would come through unlawful means. Unlike in the past, where either Americans or British will be the ones to condemn and urge us to do something, it is now us who are taking that action. That is very important because other day I was saying, for Africans to be respected and Africa to be respected, Africans must first respect themselves. We must respect ourselves. We must know that to kill our own people is not the way to go. So if you do that, you can't expect the world to respect you. They will interfere and tell you you are doing a wrong thing. So we are saying, therefore, it should be us who must do that, and we are doing that now. The African Union is also more people-centered. As I said, we have Peace and Security Council, an African Standby Force, African Bank, Court of Justice, and so on. However, these things are there. Are they functioning? When you talk about the structural functionalism, do they function as we put them on a paper to say they are doing ABZ? So there's a long way to go. But one important thing that I realize is the spatial creation of a sixth region. 6 regions, because Africa has 5 regions. And we had to add a special region, the 6th region, and there's an ECOSOC. And that one is to cater for diaspora. Diaspora, not just the ones who left during slavery, but diaspora, economic diaspora. Because there are many Africans who are now living abroad. We don't also talk about brain drain any longer. We are talking about brain gain. So if these Africans gain brain skills, they should plow back those skills to Africa. So ECOSOC is there, and they are supposed to be represented in that ECOSOC so that they can also have an input in decision-making of Africa. But still, it's at earlier stages, not properly utilized. Talking about Africa of today, and I want to claim that Africa is now a new Africa. Some of us, although I'm old in age, I regard myself as new African leader. Africa on the move. And therefore, we talk about coups, but also other aspect is that we respect our former presidents. They leave, there's a term limit now. When they leave their offices, they are recognized, they are respected. Like in Namibia, we are talking about legacy. Legacy that the founding father, our revolutionary father, Comrade Sam Nujoma, brought, fighting and bringing independence and democracy and reconciling our people, followed through democratic elections by second president, Pohamba, whom we regard as stabilizer, and now I was to call myself yours truly, who is now charged of providing now prosperity. Because we have good constitution, we have democracy, but people do not eat those things. People are now saying after 26 years, we want to now get decent shelter, not palaces, but decent shelter, jobs, clothing, food, infrastructure, schools, clinics. Those are the things we want now. So, SWAPO, my party, for electing me, I was told now I must now deal with the question of poverty and corruption. So I will therefore start first by talking about governance, which I've started with. We are a fully fledged democracy. I think Professor Sachs already touched on that. We are also having fundamentals when it comes to macroeconomic architecture. And definitely our banking system is well managed, a world-class banking system. And as Professor said already, growth rate was about 5% for last close to 20 years. But it is a growth without creating jobs. It is a growth which is not enough to address the social deficits that we have inherited. Issue of growth was put at 7% by SADC. That's the way we can at least address the basic things. But before we talk about economic development, finances, I want to still go back because I skipped something about democracy. I was at London, I was asked once, now that Africa has procedural and electoral democracy, what next? Then I said, processes, systems, and institutions to buttress that democracy. Processes dealing with electoral process, normally there is dispute after elections in Africa. It's maybe because those who are defeated feel that they were cheated. So the only way you can address that is by being transparent and have a process which is transparent and foolproof, hence processes. And then systems and institutions. This one I illustrate by using your own example in elections where Al Gore and President Bush were involved. Unfortunately, you couldn't count all of a sudden in Florida. And you were stuck. You were having this question of Florida, how many votes were, as the kind of chartered, what you call it, and so on. But what is important is that it was transparent. The Republican Party was here, Democratic Party there. They're all telling their stories. I didn't buy it, but they were selling themselves. It was transparent. The whole world was watching it. That's the process. And then, when everything else fails, we were talking about systems, processes, system. President Clinton was still a president. There were no armored cars in the streets. The system was working, as if nothing has happened. And if everything else fails, or does fail, then you must have institutions, the courts. And the courts must be independent, in Africa's case, processes, systems, and institutions that we must have to buttress our democracy. Now, I'm giving you an example what happened here. That you had process, you have system, and institutions. And it was so good that Americans who were polled said they will abide by the court's ruling. More so impressive was Al Gore, who said we are government by law, and I will abide by the ruling of the court. The man got popular votes. Professor Sachs didn't teach me that way about democracy. Democracy is majority rule. And the man got majority popular votes. But you have also archaic system, if we can be allowed to also talk, because you talk about us. You have an archaic system, electoral college, that negates the people's popular votes. So that process is the one which installed President Bush in a court, actually, court. But still, the point I'm making is that you must have processes, systems, and institutions. Therefore, you are still peace. If you don't have those things, which Africa doesn't have, all of us don't have, then there is always a problem. Fights, and instead of President Clinton being in charge, the system working, you make it the armored cars, soldiers taking over. That's why I'm still saying you must have processes, systems, and institutions in place. Now, governance, to me, to round up the whole thing, is a question of partnership. We must get rid of the days where we believed in strong presidents, personality cult, that some are gods. And that was true basically because some leaders were icons of liberation struggle. We had extraordinary personalities like Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Kaita. They really were forces. And therefore, their personalities were so big that people thought these black people who are fighting to free their people against all odds were respected. And therefore, because of that, they became a little bit like they are gods, demigods. So we are saying now partnership, in the modern way of doing it, partnership in governance. That partnership is of equals. There must be transparency and accountability. Therefore, I coined mathematical formula. It will be known, that is Hage Geingob formula. That's T plus A equals TR. Accountability or transparency plus accountability equals trust. Now, trust levels in the world concerning leaders is very low, all over the world. And it's because we are not transparent, because we are not accountable. Now, if people are the ultimate sovereigns, who say we are sovereign, but unlike Greek city-states, where all people used to come because population was small, and therefore deciding together, all of them. They say now that we are too big in population, we will refrain from exercising our sovereignty. Looking at your manifesto, we are going to buy into your manifesto and elect you as our representatives. And I will watch you for 5 years. If you fail, I will remove you. So people are the ultimate sovereign. They have the power to remove you. And if leaders can accept that from word go, that people are the ultimate sovereign, and therefore you will be accountable, you will be scared of them, because you know they are the bosses. And therefore, you will be accountable, you will be transparent. That's why in Namibia, when I became a president, I started, you say, where do we start now? From the top. So I said, it will be good, people talk too much about corruption and so on. We must act and do away with corruption, if we can do it. So I said, first is to start from the top. I declared, and my wife volunteered, even in my case, there's no constitutional requirement, decided to declare all my assets, including the little banks I have outside here. I used to work for UN, by the way. And UN, you have the credit union. So I have that account, I'm not going to close it, since 72. But everything, because I get the reports home every month and so on, like you get from your bank. All accounts I have, and she had, were listed under the PricewaterhouseCoopers supervision and declared publicly in front of the press so they could ask questions. So therefore, transparency should start from the top. So our ministers, those who are sitting here, were asked to also declare their assets. The parliament, that is required by the constitution, of course, to declare their assets, and then the civil servants to the prime minister. It has been done. I have seen their assets. It's a top secret, but I can say they are very poor. Now, we have to move because I want us to exchange views, to interact. I don't be a pastor who goes in the church and preach. Those people who are now tired, I heard that before and so on. I wanted to ask a question, but not given a chance. So I would like to give you a chance. It will be good that we can be interactive, and I have my experts who will also help me. But let me say, to address the issues of poverty, of inequality, Professor, your field, Namibia is a country which was divided through Bantustan. Even Africans were divided into different tribes and told you have your own homeland. The whites were superior, they have their own powers and everything. After fighting and we got independent, we said, let's forget that division and form one Namibia, one nation. I talk about Namibian House, that you build a house and I will jump the steps. This is not a good example for me, but I say you build a house with bricks, and the bricks I'm saying are our different tribes, ethnic groups and races. And we build constitution, is our foundation. So on that we are building our house, Namibian House. Different bricks, Tamaras, Namas, Afrikaners, Germans, those are our bricks, building blocks. The mortar to keep those bricks together are our laws we pass in the parliament. Okay, so go on. You've finished it. You let it firm up. If you push that wall, when Namibia is still a young country, even with this finger, it will collapse. But let it firm up, then you plaster it. Once you have plastered it, you will no longer identify individual bricks. It will be therefore one wall, then you paint it with Namibian colors, it becomes Namibian House, in which all Namibian children must live together. White, black, this tribe, that tribe. Then I went on to reflect further. You say, why not using this concept to the world? So I say Namibia we build Namibian House for Namibian tribes. They become one Namibia, one nation. In Africa, we are building African House, where Africans from different countries will live by using AU Charter. And when we have plastered that wall, we'll only see one Africa, one continent. But then don't end there. We go to the world and say we are going to build world community, global village, by using all sovereign states, using UN Charter. And when we are going to plaster that wall, we are going to have one world, one people. So it's one Africa, one Namibia, one nation, Africa, one continent, and one world, one people. Thank you very much. Questions can be asked. I shortened to take questions, huh?
Thank you very much. We're now prepared to take questions from Columbia students, faculty, and Columbia is noted for asking tough questions. So there's microphones on both sides. If you could line up. And before you ask a question, please identify yourself, your affiliation, whether Columbia or otherwise. And while you're lining up to ask questions, let me ask the President the first question. You have given a vigorous vision of the future. You've also talked about democracy, which is dear to our hearts. You've also talked about building. But building, as you said, are bricks. What bricks do you still have to build? Because you have 2 terms, you're in your first term. So what bricks do you want to make sure are built in your institutions before you leave your office at the end of your second term? I'm anticipating a re-election. So I don't know if you wish to stand or if your voice is vigorous.
Okay. I have 1 term. You are elected for 5 years, and that's the end of your term. If the people want, and I want, if I'm healthy, that's a different thing. But it's 1 term, and in that 1 term, we set up what we call a project. That is our roadmap. We call it Harambee Prosperity Plan. Firstly, Harambee is a Swahili word, and we deliberately chose Harambee to again not make people to feel left out. Other thing I forgot is that now one must feel left out. In governance, if you are going to leave out one tribe, one region, one race, you are spelling conflict. Inclusivity spells harmony. So I deliberately took Harambee. Swahili word, it doesn't belong to anybody. Prosperity plan. We are outlining here what we can do. Firstly, people's needs are great, the black people especially. So education. Education is the greatest equalizer. But education not to come to Colombia and get PhD, very good PhD. Because PhDs do not run countries, we philosophize. But we want, like Germans have done, artisans. So vocational training. We want to set up in 14 regions training institutions, vocational training. People can work with their hands. That's one. Then to actually provide conducive investment climate. We have natural resources, diamond, gold, uranium. When I was doing my town hall meetings all over the country, I was asking people, how many of you have seen uranium? None. How many have seen gold? None. Diamonds? 1. So I said, you see, we say we have our resources, but we don't even eat them. But there are some people, not stupid people, I didn't say stupid people, there are some people who would like to have uranium, to use it for whatever. They want to come and invest, to take it out, give it to them. Provide conducive environment, they can come and take it to their countries, not in our country, but we will tax them as some royalties. From that money, I can build now clinics, schools, and highways. So idea is for us to provide conducive investment climate. because government is not there to create jobs. It's a private sector. So we are partnering with private sector. And many of them were here last week. We had an excellent curtain raiser preparing for the big conference we're going to have, investor conference in November. And many of them are going to go, Americans. Maybe because they are coming because of Chinese. But I don't care about that, as long as they can come and invest in Namibia. So we provide investor-friendly environment. We are investor-friendly people. We are based on laws. Therefore, investors are having rights. They can repatriate their dividends. They can take us to court. And we lost many cases. So that's what Namibia is. Come and invest.
Thank you. Before I ask the first person for their question, Mr. President, let me give you our input to Namibia's development in investor-friendly. It's a capstone study that we did last year, and we'd like to follow it up next year.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, on the left-hand side, please introduce yourself, affiliation, etc.
My name is Nico Gutu. I'm an international student from Kenya in the Graduate School of Social Work here at Columbia. Mr. President, I have to thank you for the good work you're doing in Namibia. But before I ask my question, I just want to say that Harambe is a Kenyan word, which Namibians just borrowed. Thank you so much. Okay, a lot is going on in Africa. And as a social worker, I've been involved in what is going on in countries like Burundi. Last year, our chapter in Pennsylvania got involved in the issues of the suffering of the children and the women in Burundi because of the conflict that is going on. A president who has refused to leave office. When it comes to the African Union, when you meet as heads of state, he finds a home and is comfortable there. How comes you don't hold accountable your colleagues who are causing suffering to the children and women of Africa?
You answer him first?
Yes.
Firstly, my brother, Harambe is a Swahili word. It's not a Kenyan word. But Mzee Kenyatta used it during his plan to Harambe, yes. But it's a Swahili word. It doesn't belong to Kenya. It belongs to all of us. But Kenya used it, Mzee Kenyatta used it to talk about Harambe in talking about moving same direction. But I just use, like I say, unity in English. Does it belong to Americans? Unity? No. So I'm glad you started using it, but I'm not using it. And President of Kenya approved it. I said in my introduction, although I meant something because I was writing, that you are saying we don't take care of African leaders who oppress their people, or how did you put it? Yeah. Who don't govern properly or what?
I'm saying you don't hold accountable to your colleagues when you meet them under the African Union. When they're criticized by other people, they rush to the African Union and their colleagues pat them on the back.
No, you're not listening to me. I said when somebody comes through illegal means or so on, we are the ones who kick them out these days. They are not accepted in AU if they came in the wrong way. Now, if you are saying somebody stood in Kenya and is elected by Kenyans democratically, democracy is never perfect, even here. So elected democratically, you want me to now say that person who is sitting in AU, you're not properly elected or what? But if they come through unlawful means, we ostracize them. We kick them out. That's New Africa. You must come back to Africa. Definitely, but you must know, my brother, if Namibians elected me, whatever way, and I'm the president elected by Namibians, AU cannot sit there and say, Hage, you are doing a wrong thing in your country. Because people are sovereign, I said. And those sovereign people sent me there. So we must respect that. But when they kill their own people or they are coming in through illegal means, it's the AU, it's the SADC, ECOWAS, East African Community who kick them out. There are many cases like that until they have to go and get their house in order. That's all we can do, dealing with sovereignty of other countries. Oh, well, you could never do that in the past, but we are doing it now. But I don't know how you do it to now tell the president of a country, Namibia, because I quarreled with my trade unions to say, hey, you Hage, you must not treat your people like that. That's not the issue. Because I'm elected by those people and sent to AU. But if you come through illegal means, we are taking action against them. And even when there is, like in Gabon, there was elections, dispute, I am part of the committee members. We have been set up from Southern Africa, I'm a member. 5 of us are supposed to go to Gabon to see that things are going all right. In the past, we could have never done that. We could have said, it's Gabonese problem, leave it to them. So we are trying our best, my brother. Come back and see. I'll take you around. You have been too long here, I think.
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Asante sana. You don't even know Swahili. Asante sana. Unasema Swahili?
Asante sana mzee.
Unasema Swahili?
Hiyo ni Kiswahili mzee.
Okay.
Asante sana.
Hi, my name is Miles Mitchell. I'm in the School of General Studies. It's an undergraduate program here. My question is related to the mining industry, which you referred to, and I'd like to go perhaps a little bit more into depth. And in reference to your point about the plaster of Africa, it strikes me that one of the ways that you could create leverage in the global markets, you said, for building infrastructure, schools, so on and so forth, is to, I guess, improve the management of these resources. I'm wondering, Mr. President, can you give us, I guess, a brief discourse on what are the real challenges and dynamics of creating perhaps a resource management block similar in kind perhaps like OPEC or something similar that can create leverage for African countries to make the most use of nature's bounty?
OPEC, we are part of OPEC too, huh? Africa is part of it, so.
Specifically for non-oil.
But yeah, non-oil, okay. Firstly, in our regional, what you call RECs, Regional Economic Commissions, or economic matters, we discussed that. But one thing we are saying is that from now on, those who are coming to invest in Africa must come on our terms. We must have terms that determine when you come about environmental protection, because you just come and dig holes and left. So we are saying we must come on our terms, and we are saying all the countries in the world, those who are developed, have to industrialize. Industrialize, we have to add value to your resources. We are now saying beneficiation of our resources is the key. That way you transfer technology and you create jobs. Instead of just coming to take the stones like marble to Italy, polish, cut there, and send it back to us, higher prices. So industrialization is what we are looking at. That means we must add value to our natural resources and also protect them. Like one example I'll give you is the fishing industry. Namibia is one of the fishing countries, and that industry is properly controlled in Namibia compared to even with other parts of the world. Properly controlled. We have people who are scientists who will first look at the species and then give their figure. Then we have the industry, and then the minister, based on that, will give the quotas for a year. So it's highly controlled. We want to do it that way with others. But the problem we have is some of these big companies are owned by foreigners exclusively. And that's what we are saying now in NIEF, that we must look at inequality that is there. Namibians and Africans were deprived from benefiting from their own resources. And that's resources that makes other people rich. So I say, while we welcome all of you and white people who are in Namibia and South Africa, we must start to share. Ownership must be shared also. Not grabbing from anybody, as some people are reacting here. But Professor here is the key, inequality. If the society is unequal, how are you going to maintain peace? So those who have property must not just sit and say, we are protected by our constitution. Constitution is a paper in English, I said to somebody. It must be internalized by majority when they push it. Tell them a constitution. We are saying we at political level have reconciled. We appoint white people in government ministers. We are saying you have the land, you have the resources, also meet us halfway to share with your brothers who are still languishing in poverty. So, to talk about resources, owning it is a big thing. It's owned by foreigners in Namibia and South Africa. But we don't want a war. We fought war already. We don't want a war. We can talk. War is when diplomacy fails. So we can still talk, engage our people. I have town hall meetings. We have this project. It has been welcomed by many of Namibians, white, black, yellow. So that's what, I don't know whether I understood your question, but that's what I would say.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. If you are not happy, I see you are not quite happy, we can meet. I have many experts here too. Okay. That one day, talk to him. Yes.
Thank you once more, Mr. President, for coming to speak with us here. My name is Cosmas Ibindi. I'm a senior in Columbia College from Zimbabwe. My question is on your regional foreign policy and with regards specifically to SADC. Over the past few months, Ian Khama has spoken out against President Robert Mugabe and his deeply fought democracy and human rights record, as well as his personality cult. You addressed this in your speech, but I want to ask why you, as chairman of SADC in 2011, or as president of Namibia, have not personally spoken out or addressed this issue, when you can clearly see that Zimbabwe is affecting the rest of Southern Africa?
How do you know we don't talk about it? Because we don't go to the public and shout so that you can be happy and dance in the streets in New York?
Sorry, I missed that.
I'm saying, how do you know we don't speak out against it?
No, you have
because we don't publicly say it so that you can be happy and dance in the streets here?
No, Mr. President. President Ian Khama came out last week at a proper press conference and addressed it, right, objectively. It's not about jumping in the street, it's just the objective truth.
Now I'm saying to please you, while you are here, why?
No, I'm a Zimbabwean student who's studying in the US, who's going to go back to Africa. It's not about pleasing me in the US.
Okay. Now what I'm saying is Zimbabwe, that President Mugabe, this term, was he elected?
He has been in power for 36 years.
No, I'm asking this term.
He was elected in an election which SADC said was fair but not free. Was free but not fair, sorry.
So it's Zimbabweans who decide, not us.
No, you sent an observer mission which says the election is free but not fair.
Yes.
And you don't speak
and
out.
The rest is yours. You must go back and fight. We can't fight for you. We cannot, you see, I said if a person is elected by people of that country and that elections was regarded as free elections and nobody went to the court to challenge it, unlike the previous elections. And therefore, we regard it as Zimbabwean problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to remind you that there's always the human element to institutions, right? Courts and Supreme Court judges, even in the US, are appointed by governments. So you have a system which has been in power for 36 years. The Supreme Court judges are obviously compromised. So that's where regional intervention comes in. So that was my question. But
yes, what I'm saying is that we differ in how we do things. We are going to Swaziland, and many of us said our own concerns, how we are going to raise it and so on. We get a letter from so-called leaders, elders, letter telling us to tell off President Mugabe. We are not puppets of anybody. We had ideas to see how do we go ahead to talk as Africans, our own way. And you would write me a letter to say, go and tell Mugabe has been too long in office. Talk to Zimbabweans. But as a sovereign state, I must, well, if President Khama is doing that, that's his business. But definitely to me, I'll be concerned about what happens after President Mugabe goes. I'll be concerned what happens after I go. Like when President Nyoma was going, we were concerned what will happen. When President Pohamba was leaving, we were concerned what will happen. We are concerned that way. Therefore, we prepare for it. In South Africa, they are concerned what's going to happen and so on. But I cannot go and fight there. And we have an African way of doing things. I cannot say things to please somebody else and say, I condemned Mugabe. No, I will have a way to talk. We are sovereign countries, but neighbors. And I may say, my brother, this thing, is it going to work properly? What's going to happen in case this and this happen? We do that. We're not going to stand in the public and shout and say, Mugabe must go. That's for Zimbabweans. That's for you.
Okay,
Thank you.
My name is Tembi Mdachi. I'm a second-year student at the School of International Affairs. My question has to do with term limits. So last year, Rwanda had a referendum where the people voted for their president to extend his term. And looking, after hearing a presentation, it's very clear that the respective institutions has definitely been a very big contributor to Namibia's economic success. And I had the opportunity to actually see the high quality of life in Namibia this year. I wanted to get your thoughts on term limits. Do you think they weaken the integrity of institutions in Africa as a way of, acting as an impediment to promoting strong governance?
Term limits. I'm the advocate for term limits. Term limits for presidents, executive presidents who are elected direct by people. Elected, no accountability after that. Not held by people directly. Because you go like I do, I go and campaign with my manifesto, then you buy into, you elect me. I got a high percentage. Then I'm free now, until next elections. So therefore, to me, for presidents who are elected direct by people, there must be a term limit. And we have term limit in Namibia for 10 years. But let me tell you one thing. I was a chairman of Constituent Assembly, and I believe in term limits. And after 2 5-year terms, we had a slight problem, and the president said he had this problem. And I'm not going to tell you all the problems, it's Namibian problems. And we said, after I listened, I said, look, this is a constitution, a paper in English, only understood by maybe less than 1% of people, not internalized. If you look at our army, that's a former liberation army. So I said, now, what I can do, leave it to me, what I can do, in the interest of Namibia, nobody else, is to say the first president was elected by Constituent Assembly and there's a transitional clause, and shall serve for 2 5-year terms. We just put 3 there, and only to that president. The man who fought, who was in Bush, only to him. To say instead of 2, we put there 3. So he shall serve 3 5-year terms. But the term limit in the body is contained. And as I told you, I am already the 3rd president of Namibia. Only 26 years, 25 years, I am already the 3rd, and very soon one of them is going to come and take over. So term limits I believe in. But if you are elected, like in South Africa and Botswana, through parliament, or in England where the prime minister comes from parliament, and you are there in the parliament, you are accountable, because the question is accountability. So if you are sitting in the parliament like President Zuma does, you see how ugly it can be, and you sit there and being questioned and being accountable, no need for term limits, as it is in England or Canada or so on, because they come through parliament, prime ministers. But some presidents are now being elected by parliaments. So if they are elected by parliament, they are accountable to parliament, no need. But executive presidents, like here, like my case, I believe strongly in term limits.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The equivalent of term limits at the university and in his schedules. So we'll take one more question. Sorry. Last question for you.
Thanks. Hello, Mr. President. I'm Ben Xu, and I'm an international student from Shanghai, and I'm a freshman here in Columbia College. So my question is, you addressed the inequality in Namibia, and it is not only the economic inequality, but also social inequality in terms of, for example, land ownership. So what I'm interested in, along with the rapid economic growth in Namibia, there are also increasing economic inequality. So I also know that there's great ethnical diversity in Namibia. So for example, the majority of the ethnic group in Namibia is less than 50% of the entire population. So there's great urban-rural division and also ethnic division between the distribution of wealth. So what are some ethnically targeted policies that are used in Namibia in your administration to address those economic inequality and social inequality issues?
Thank you very much. Inequality, I said, is the biggest problem. What is bad is it based on color. Now, you see, we had in South Africa what is called black economic empowerment. Because blacks are the ones who were left out. In this country, you had affirmative action, again, to see that some people were left out. So we, again, typically in Namibia, didn't want to use the word black economic empowerment, because it will connote racial element. We're very sensitive to that. Therefore, we talk about NEF, and that is already being questioned by some people. It's just a draft document that is trying to see that the ownership patterns must change. And we are appealing to those who own to share, as I said. Because if we just stay that way, we're seeing that we have to share, empower those who are not privileged enough in their own country. They are majority, blacks are majority in Namibia. If you sit on that, you are spelling conflict. They will feel left out. You are leaving out majority, you are spelling conflict. I said inclusivity spells harmony. Exclusivity spells conflict. And that's how conflicts are started. But as I said, we are trying in Namibia to be inclusive, to discuss with those who are concerned. This plan that we have is approved by many white, black people trying to hold hands. And within this plan, we have projects that we have worked out. We have targeted dates so that we can implement it. Within that, we are talking about land issue, we are talking about mining and so on. We had, you come from Shanghai?
Yeah, I am.
You see, we have a uranium mine, which is owned 100% by Chinese. 100% uranium, very sensitive thing. Now, somehow government must have some say. Such a sensitive, strategic thing. So we're trying to look into that people came with money they bought because it's a capitalist system. And they own 100%. Even things like uranium. So Chinese company owns it 100%, now that you are from Shanghai. So you must tell your government that they must give something to the Namibian people.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely tell them.
Very good.
Thank you so much for your response.
Very good.
Unfortunately, the president also has a schedule.
But the problem in Namibia is we are saying no one must feel left out. Now they are feeling left out, but not by me.
Okay, one question, last question.
I'd just like to know about your strategies around offshore tax havens. Given the mineral wealth that you have, how, in the past, what's been the experience, and right now, what are your strategies?
These tax havens are the ones who are causing trouble in Africa. I was talking in Washington about illicit outflow of money, African money, from mines and so on, billions. I don't want to listen to those things. Offshore havens. Maybe they were meant for good purpose that time, but now it's to hide the stolen goods. And I don't support it.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I must say, I'm very glad I permitted the last question since I'm teaching a class on tax havens. So it was not a plan. She's one of my students. Thank you. Do you wish to make any closing comments, or other than the fact we welcome you back whenever you wish to come and continue the dialogue?
Now, thank you very much. I'm really honored to have my friend, also Joseph, and all of you. Thank you very much for coming out that way. Namibia is a child of international solidarity, midwifed by United Nations. Friend to all, enemy to none. That's Namibia.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats as we escort the President and his delegation out of the building. Thank you.